Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Great pleasure to see you after a while. I came back late last night, and I have just briefed the General Assembly on my visit to many countries, on many important meetings, but particularly on G20 summit meeting, which was held in London. I told them that I told to the leaders of G20 that the world is at the tipping point and we can tip into darkness, deepening poverty and human despair. And I explained about my 4-point priority, which I have explained in my letter to the G20 leaders well before G20 meeting. You may remember that when there was a question about the confirming $1 trillion, at that time I had already sent out asking $1 trillion to G20 leaders. I thought that to help most vulnerable people, at least that was my estimate, but I left it to the G20 leaders to discuss this matter. In between, I had informal individual bilateral contacts with many leaders, including Prime Minister Gordon Brown as president of G20 summit meeting, and I have received quite favorable responses from the G20 leaders. I was very much encouraged by such a strong unity of sense of unity and solidarity by the leaders of G20. I have attended many multilateral meetings of such kind, but that was the most encouraging, most well organized, most well coordinated, and where leaders expressed their strong sense of solidarity to make early recovery from this economic crisis. I'm glad that again the leaders have agreed to mobilize $1.1 trillion in addition to $5 trillion for the global stimulus packages. And that is very encouraging, and I am very much committed to work very closely together with the G20 leaders. Most important things, what I told to the leaders is that translating this commitment to concrete measures and concrete action will be the key. I'm going to again continue to discuss this matter as the Secretary-General to represent many developing countries. And I'm also encouraged by this task they asked to the United Nations to establish a global vulnerability alert. I have discussed in depth during my stay in Paris, where I convened the Chief Executive Board meeting, where Bretton Woods heads, as well as all specialized agencies and funds and programs have participated. There we agreed that we will try to establish this vulnerability alert before the end of June and report to a G8 meeting. In addition to this G20 summit meeting, as you know, I have attended very important international conferences on Afghanistan twice, once in Moscow, in Hague. I attended the League of Arab summit meeting in Doha, and also Alliance of Civilization meeting in Istanbul. And this is what I can brief you, and I'm ready for your questions.
Yes, sure. Yes, Mr. Secretary-General, during your absence, North Korea did the launch. What is your view on this launch? Is it against relevant resolutions, or is it not against relevant resolutions?
I have already issued my statement expressing my regret over DPRK's launch. I understand that the Security Council is still in the process of discussing this matter. My hope is that the Security Council will come out with a unified message on this issue.
Mr. Mr. Secretary-General, what about the Board of Inquiry report on Gaza, sir? I mean, why isn't this report going to be released in full so that the public would know the UN assessment of what Israel did in Gaza, and why shouldn't it be expanded to include all what Israel did in Gaza during this war? Thank you, sir.
I have not yet received this report. I expect to receive it this week from Ian Martin, and then I will, after reviewing this Board of Inquiry report, I will decide the future course of action on this issue, what further actions will be required.
Do you think Israel should pay compensation for the destroyed UN headquarters in Gaza, sir, so that there will be a price to pay not to do this again? Thank you.
Anyway, for any detailed matters, I will have an opportunity of letting my position known after receiving and reviewing this report.
Secretary-General, the UN has been accused of cowardice for standing aside in Rwanda 15 years ago. President Paul Kagame accused the UN of cowardice today. What's your reaction?
I attended a very solemn meeting this afternoon, and I again expressed my resolve as a Secretary General that I will do all my power not to repeat this kind of a human tragedy in the name of humanity. We have seen such a grim, dark history in the 20th century. I told them that that is exactly why I have appointed my special advisor on prevention of genocide. For any specific comment, I have not read that. I will come back later on that. Yeah.
Mr. Secretary-General, do you think the fact that you are from South Korea puts you in a position to be in a better position to negotiate this North Korean crisis?
I'm representing the United Nations. I'm the Secretary General of the United Nations. I believe that my experience as a former South Korean foreign minister will be useful whenever it comes to my mandate and whenever I have to deal with this directly, personally on this issue. But at this time, as the Security Council is discussing this matter, in addition to what I have already expressed, my views as Secretary General, I will see how Security Council will come. But I sincerely hope that Security Council will be able to come out with the unified message. This is important.
Mr. Ban, did you discuss Sudan in your recent visits and meetings? And are you satisfied with the way Prosecutor Ocampo leading the investigations?
Particularly during my participation in the League of Arab States summit meeting in Doha, I have met many Arab leaders, and you may reasonably understand that during last several weeks, the situation in Sudan has been one of my top priorities on the issue, particularly on the humanitarian issues. I have made my sincere appeal and also urged many African and Arab leaders to influence upon President Bashir to reverse the decision of expelling humanitarian workers. As you know, United Nations and the Sudanese government about 2 weeks ago held a joint assessment meeting. Their Sudanese government also recognized that there is a serious gap because of this expulsion of international humanitarian workers. I sincerely hope that they will reverse their decision at this time.
Mr. Secretary General, over the
This ICC issue, I have made my position always clear, publicly and privately. The function of the ICC, judges and prosecutor are distinct from my function as Secretary-General. Therefore, the authority and their decision should be respected as such. At the same time, the Sudanese government should also address this issue of peace and justice in both. That is very important.
General, over the weekend in Pakistan, in Swat in Pakistan, a horrible video emerged in which a woman was being flogged by the Taliban, and that has outraged the human rights and women rights group in Pakistan and elsewhere. Do you have any reaction to this inhuman treatment of women?
You are now talking about Pakistan? Yes. Pakistan, yes.
Maybe you've seen the video, maybe you've
Yeah.
not seen the video of this woman being flogged only because she refused to marry one person from Taliban, and she was taken out and beaten. Do you have any reaction to that?
I read that article, and even though I didn't see the video itself, just by reading this article about this flogging, this is just unacceptable, and I'm glad that the Chief Justice of Pakistan has taken a right decision. While I appreciate all these different systems and traditions in many different countries, the respecting and upholding basic human rights, and this is most important. This is universally accepted and upheld principles which we must respect. Therefore, I would urge that any government leaders that they should fully respect the human rights and humanitarian rights. And in that regard, I would take this opportunity again, the laws which was taken in Afghanistan, that I would urge again that the President of Afghanistan should abolish these laws which severely infringes the human rights, basic human rights of women. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Given that there's about 100,000 civilians trapped in Sri Lanka between the government and the Tamil Tigers, it's unclear whether you're asking actually for a ceasefire. Have you asked the government to not try to go into the conflict zone in a way that can hurt the civilians? What's the UN's thinking on Sri Lanka at this time?
I have spoken on many occasions with President Rajapaksa of Sri Lanka. And as you know, I have sent OCHA Under Secretary-General Mr. John Holmes. Even most recently, I have spoken with the President of Rajapaksa on the necessity and importance of protecting the human rights of civilians who have been trapped in the fighting zones. I again hope that the Sri Lankan government take all necessary measures so that these civilians can move freely without any danger, without threat to the safety zone. At the same time, LTTE, they must fully cooperate with the government in allowing these civilians so that they can be freely move from this war zone. This very basic human rights and basic humanitarian matters. I have been urging the Sri Lankan government to provide all possible, through all possible means, humanitarian assistance. They have taken many measures through a sea route and through land route to provide humanitarian assistance, but that is not enough at this time. Again, I urge both LTT and Sri Lankan government to respect human rights and do whatever, all possible means, so that whole tens of thousands of people trapped there, they can move freely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.